With the popularity of video interviewing on the rise, I thought it might be a good idea to talk to a few experts in this industry to find out what the best video interview questions are to send to candidates. Now, these apply whether you're having a live one-on-one video interview or even whether you're requesting pre-recorded videos in response to particular questions. And I've selected the 10 most commonly suggested questions by these experts, and I'm going to talk you through these 10 questions and why you should ask them in a video interview. So question 1, what are your career goals? Now, there's a lot of debate in the HR and recruitment industry as to whether you should ask questions like, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Asking something like, what are your career goals is a great alternative to this because it's less of a trick question, but it still gives you insight into a candidate's aspirations, where they might want to be in the future, whether they're going to fit with your longer term strategy. And it's a good question to be asking in a video interview because it is direct, specific, but also open. And that's the important thing with all of these questions, really. You don't want questions that can be short, sort of yes or no answers. You want to give the candidate a chance to actually speak freely, but about a topic that is very relevant to their potential employment with your company. In the spirit of talking about specific topics, question 2 is, tell me about a recent project you worked on. Again, this is targeted and direct. It gives them a chance to talk about something they are possibly very passionate about. It gives you an idea into how they work. And again, they can speak freely and openly on a topic that is, well, we hope, relevant to the job role that you're hiring them for. Question 3, tell me about yourself. Now, some experts suggest that in a face-to-face interview, you shouldn't really be asking this question because it's quite common and it elicits quite a scripted response. When you're talking about pre-recorded videos, though, you kind of have to concede that a scripted response is something that you might get, and that's fine. What's important is the way the candidate answers. This question, or prompt rather, gets the candidate talking about themselves, gives you an insight into their personality. And according to onboarding consultant Jen Teague, this question is one of the most useful questions that you can possibly ask, other than questions that are specific to the job role itself. And you should be looking out for somebody who doesn't complain, who has energy when they speak, and possibly who avoids fidgeting or moving around too much in their seat. Question 4 is a very interesting one, and it's not a very common one at all. And it's tell me about 3 people who you would choose to work with you on a particular project. Now, the reason why this is so interesting is, again, because it's a video interview or even a pre-recorded video, it gives them a chance to speak freely and openly. But you get to learn an awful lot about what the candidate values in terms of who they work with, the type of people they choose to surround themselves with. Maybe they work with more practical people, more creative people. Maybe they work with people who are higher up in the hierarchy or who are beneath them, although I don't particularly like that phrase. It's a very well-suited question for a video interview because the candidate doesn't need a pen or paper. They don't need to search for things on the computer. They can literally just talk to you about their ideal colleagues, who they are, what they're like, and this can tell you a lot about how they might approach teamwork if they were given a role within your company. Question 5 is one of my favorites, which is, tell me about a mistake you made, how did you deal with it, and what did you learn from it? Mistakes are a very, very important part of any career. It doesn't matter so much that you make a mistake. What does matter is how you deal with that mistake. And this question is just as important in a video interview as it would be in a face-to-face interview. The mistake, the response, and the lesson learned can tell you a great deal about how a candidate approaches setbacks and how they deal with high-stress situations. Question 6, how would you solve the following problem? Now, this is a good way of introducing something very specific into the interview, and it can be as specifically to do with the candidate's future job role as you like. If you have a particular challenge that you know they are going to be coming face to face with, you can find out how they would approach it. And on the video, you should be looking out for their ability to articulate their solution to the problem. You should be looking for their passion in dealing with that problem. You should be spotting whether they are humble or whether they're arrogant, because this can tell you a lot about them as a person. And you should take care to observe as much about their temperament as you can. Another good question to find out about career aspirations and where a candidate sees themselves in the future, but also how they would approach their work, is to ask, how do you evaluate success? Now, this isn't necessarily a standard interview question, but maybe it should be, because it gives you a good idea of what the candidate might be looking for in their career. Do they want challenging work? Do they want more responsibility? Do they just want more money? So asking them to talk you through how they evaluate success is a great way of finding out this information. It's important if the job role you're hiring for has a very specific measure of success. For example, you might be measuring success very objectively based on certain metrics and KPIs, key performance indicators. If the candidate purely judges success based on other people's opinions of them or more subjective measures, then it may be that they're not going to perform particularly well in that role. Question 8 is, what is your greatest career accomplishment? Now, experts consistently agree that during interviews, whether that's video interviews, face-to-face interviews, telephone interviews, you should be getting specific examples from the candidate, because this deals with the problem of people potentially downloading cut and paste responses. Now, sure, in a video interview, particularly one where the responses are pre-recorded, candidates could prepare their answers in advance. But you can still look out for how they talk about their greatest career accomplishment. You can learn a lot based on what they value as their greatest accomplishment, because something that they value as their greatest accomplishment might not mean too much to you or to the ideal person for this job role. Question 9, you should be asking the candidate to describe their ideal work environment. Now, this is important because an interview isn't just about what the candidate can do for you. You also have to assess what you can do for the candidate and whether your workplace is going to meet their expectations, because if they're unhappy in the role, they're not going to be the best person for that role. So during a regular face-to-face or real-time interview, you can explore this through two-way conversation. But in a video interview, particularly a pre-recorded video interview, you can't do this very easily. However, you can ask questions which allow candidates to describe to you their ideal situation, and you can then compare whether this matches the reality of the environment they're going to be going into. If you want to make this question more about work and what they can bring to the table, you could rephrase it along the lines of, what type of work environment are you most productive in? But remember, not all questions should be about what they are bringing to the table. It should also be about whether your reality is going to match their expectations. Finally, another good question to ask in a video interview is, how do you approach working as part of a team? Questions like this can help you to identify introverts compared to extroverts. It can help you see whether the candidate really does seem enthusiastic or upbeat about working part as a team, or they may seem quite scared by the idea, even if their words are saying what you want them to say. You remember, look out for their body language, look how they react to this question. You could rephrase this question as, do you prefer working as a team or do you prefer working by yourself? But in particular with a video interview, this can't open up a conversation quite so easily. So you do want to open up that question as much as possible to encourage a discussion, even if it's a one-sided discussion, rather than simply a this or a that answer, because that closes down the conversation straight away. These are just some of the challenges you have to think about when it's a one-way street rather than a two-way conversation. And they are the 10 top questions that you should be asking, according to the experts, in a video interview.